As if Bronny James' NBA career hasn't been embarrassing enough already, he is now being lectured on national television by his father. You know, as a child, there was nothing worse than being publicly admonished by your parents. Poor Bronny James, he was publicly admonished in front of the entire country.
This may be the last chance he ever gets, because Bronny was thrown into the fire and got third-degree burns. We just saw a terrible sign for Bronny's NBA future.
There is no way to look at Bronny James right now and not feel like this story is getting louder by the day. Every time he steps on the floor, every missed shot, every awkward possession, every quiet stretch where he disappears in the flow of the game, the conversation gets a little more intense. And that is exactly why people are saying this is becoming embarrassing. Not because he is some hopeless player, not because he has no talent, but because the expectations, the attention, and the spotlight around him are all so massive that even a small struggle looks huge. I would imagine it is extremely difficult to be a father and be the leader of the team at the same time. With Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves out, more than likely, they're out for the season. I know Austin Reeves is out for the season, but either way, LeBron James is once again the leader on the court for the Lakers, and he has a responsibility to treat Bronny James the same way that he would treat any other role player. That is the reality Bronny James is living in. He is not just another young guard trying to carve out a role. He is LeBron James' son. And whether people like that fact or hate it, it changes everything. If Bronny were some random second-round pick with no family tie to the biggest basketball star of this generation, the conversation around him would be very different. People would probably talk about him as a work in progress, a developmental guard, someone who needs time. But that is not the world he was drafted into. He entered the league already carrying a debate about whether he belonged there at all. And that debate is not going away anytime soon. The truth is the Bronny story has always been bigger than basketball. That is what made the draft so controversial in the first place. A lot of people felt like the Lakers were not just evaluating a prospect. They were making a move to satisfy LeBron. That is where the frustration started, because the public does not love the feeling that a roster spot is being used for a family storyline. People want the NBA to feel earned. They want guys to be there because they can help a team win, not because their last name gives them access to the building. That is why every Bronny struggle gets amplified. It is not only about his play. It is about the way his path was created. When he was drafted, the message from the Lakers was clear. They wanted to tell people this was not charity. This was not some favor. This was earned. But the problem is, once you say that out loud, the pressure goes way up. Now Bronny is not just a young player trying to learn the league. He is a player whose entire existence in the NBA is being judged through the lens of whether the organization was honest with the fan base. That's a brutal place to be. And to be fair, Bronny has not exactly made things easier with his preseason play. The numbers are not good, and more importantly, the film has not given people much reason to settle down. When your shooting is cold, your aggression is low, your decision-making looks rushed, and your defense is inconsistent, there is not much space left for excuses. That's especially true for a player whose main path to value is supposed to come through role-playing skills. If you are not an elite scorer, then you'd better defend. If you are not an elite shooter, then you'd better compete. If you are not a creator, then you'd better be relentless without the ball. Right now, that combination is exactly what people are not seeing enough of from Bronny. The frustrating part for many observers is that the talent is not the only issue here. Effort, urgency, and activity matter, too. And those are the things that stand out most when a player is fighting for his place. Fans and analysts are not expecting Bronny to walk in and become a star overnight. Nobody reasonably thought that. But they do want to see a player who looks like he knows what's at stake. They want a guy who runs the floor like his life depends on it, who fights for every loose ball, who sprints back on defense, who stays locked in when he doesn't have the ball, and who makes every possession feel important. So JJ Redick forced to play guys like Timmy Aguero and Chris Mannon. But even then, Bronny barely cracked 20 minutes in a blowout. Why? You know, the Lakers want him to succeed, to not look dumb for drafting him. JJ Redick once scolded the media for ever doubting Bronny. I want to clarify one thing you just said, which is Rob and I did not give Bronny anything. Bronny has earned this. Yeah. So why just 20 minutes in a blowout? Because just the other night in OKC, a 40-point blowout, Bronny playing point couldn't even get it past half court in an NBA game. This ain't the G League anymore, and it showed. That is where the disappointment comes in, because too often Bronny has looked passive. Not always, but enough that people notice. In transition, there are moments when he doesn't look urgent enough. Off the ball, there are possessions where he doesn't create enough space or movement to help the offense. On defense, there have been sequences where the focus is not there early enough. And in the NBA, even one or two of those habits can make a player look like he is not fully engaged. Whether that is fair or not, that is the hardest part of being Bronny James. The margin for error is almost non-existent. Now, there is a reason some people are still willing to keep hope alive. Bronny did show a different side in the G League last season. He had moments where he looked much more comfortable, and that matters. He was scoring, he was attacking, and he had stretches that suggested he could be more than just a name on a roster. A big game here and there, including that 39-point performance, gave people something to point at and say, see, there is a player in there. And there probably is. But G League success doesn't automatically turn into NBA success. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make when evaluating development. The G League can tell you that a player has confidence, rhythm, and the ability to put up numbers against a certain level of competition. But the NBA is a different world. The speed is different, the physicality is different, the spacing is tighter, the margin for error is smaller, and the role expectations are completely different. In the G League, a player can be asked to do a little bit of everything. In the NBA, if you are not a star, you are usually asked to do one or two very specific things extremely well. That is why Bronny's role is still such a mystery. What exactly is his NBA identity supposed to be? Is he a shooter? Not really, at least not yet. Is he a point guard? Maybe, but he hasn't shown enough consistency under pressure. Is he a defensive stopper? Not at this level, at least not yet. Is he a connector? Possibly. Is he a role player who can quietly do the dirty work? That would require a level of consistency and energy that he hasn't fully shown so far. And that is the problem. The Lakers are not in a position where they can afford to carry someone just because the story is nice. Man was exposed over and over again. Looked like a guy who doesn't belong in the NBA. So sure enough, OKC in LA, first quarter, Bronny turns the ball over on a simple inbounds pass. Then the man who hounded him before, Q-San Wallace, gets screened. But Bronny doesn't take advantage. That is another reason the criticism has become so intense. The Lakers are under pressure to compete now. They are not a rebuilding team with time to waste. They have expectations. They have a fan base that demands results. They have stars who are aging and a roster that needs every advantage it can get. So when people look at Bronny and ask whether he deserves a roster spot, they are not just asking a personal question. They are asking a team-building question. And that is fair because every roster spot matters. Every minute matters. Every developmental decision matters. If the Lakers are going to spend real NBA resources on a young player, that player has to bring something specific to the table. They do not have the luxury of carrying someone through multiple seasons just to see what happens. That is why the Bronny situation is different from some of the examples people compare it to. When other teams carry a star's brother or someone tied to a big name, the expectations are often lower and the transparency is clear. Fans understand what is going on. They may not love it, but at least the organization is not trying to pretend it is something else. With Bronny, that is where a lot of the resentment came from. The public felt like the Lakers were trying to sell the move as pure merit, while everyone watching knew the family connection was the real story. That disconnect made people skeptical from day one. And once skepticism is in place, the player has to do a lot more work to win the crowd back. That is where Bronny is now. He is not just battling opponents. He is battling perception. And perception can be ruthless. Still, it is important to be fair here. Bronny is young. He has dealt with pressure that most players will never feel. He has gone through serious health concerns. He has been under a microscope for years. And he is trying to develop in a league where the spotlight does not pause for anyone. That is not easy. A lot of players struggle early. A lot of players look lost before they figure things out. Sometimes the body catches up later than the mind. Sometimes the confidence takes time. Sometimes a player just needs the right role, the right staff, the right stretch of minutes, and the right mental reset. So, it would be a mistake to act like the story is fully over. But it would also be a mistake to pretend the concerns are fake. Because the concerns are real. The shot has to improve. The decision-making has to clean up. The urgency has to be more obvious. The off-ball movement has to become sharper. The defensive focus has to be more consistent. And most importantly, Bronny has to show he can bring something to the court that the Lakers actually need. It is not enough to be a good story. In the NBA, good stories get attention. Good players stay in the league. That is the line Bronny is standing on right now. And with LeBron getting older, with the possibility that his career winds down sooner rather than later, the pressure on Bronny only gets heavier. A lot of people imagine this path as something temporary, a father-son moment, a family celebration, a special chapter in NBA history. But once the emotion fades, the basketball has to speak. And right now, the basketball has not spoken loudly enough. That is why people keep saying this is getting embarrassing. Not because they want the kid to fail. Many people do not. They just don't like the way the whole thing has been packaged. They don't like the feeling that the story came before the proof. They don't like the idea that the NBA was asked to make room for a dream before the dream had fully earned it. And now, with every rough preseason showing, every uneven stretch, every quiet game, that frustration gets louder. Bronny still has time. He still has a path. He still has the chance to flip the script if he starts showing real growth, real consistency, and real fight. But the window is getting tighter, the patience is getting thinner, and the league is not going to wait forever. Or, in the case of Bronny James, someone who aspires to be a role player. For Bronny James, though, the injuries to Luka and Austin Reeves provide a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Your dad got you into the NBA, but LeBron cannot guarantee that you're going to get minutes. With these injuries, Bronny James is pretty much guaranteed a little bit of playing time. This is his opportunity to prove that he is an NBA caliber player. And last night, Bronny James once again proved his not. That is what makes this moment so important. This is no longer just about being LeBron James' son. This is about proving he can survive on his own. It is about showing that he belongs because of his game, not because of his last name. And if he can't do that soon, the conversation around him is only going to get harsher. At the end of the day, the NBA does not care about the storyline nearly as much as the fans do. It cares about production. It cares about defense, shot-making, decision-making, and consistency. Bronny has to start giving people a reason to believe there is a real future here, not just a famous one. So, yes, the struggles are continuing. Yes, the criticism is growing. And yes, the pressure is becoming almost impossible to ignore. But this story is not finished yet. Bronny James still has a chance to change the tone. He still has a chance to silence the noise. He still has a chance to make people talk about his game instead of his name. That is the challenge in front of him now. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to subscribe for more NBA stories, deep dives, and real conversations about the biggest names in basketball.